Hello, friends. Tonight's story is not about love found easily. It is about love born from rescue, silence, and sacrifice. A poor native fisherman pulled an unconscious woman from a raging river, never knowing she carried a past soaked in blood and wealth. She remembered nothing, not her name, not her family, not the danger hunting her. But when her past finally came looking for her, it did not come with mercy. It came with knives, fire, and a choice that would tear two hearts apart. So let us go back to the night when the river decided her fate, and a single act of kindness changed everything.
The river had never been gentle. It cut through the valley like a living thing, twisting, biting, taking whatever slipped too close. Cale had grown up beside it. He'd learned its moods the way a man learned an animal that could not be trained, when it whispered, when it roared, and when it pretended to be calm just long enough to kill you. That morning, it lied. Mountain rains had swollen the banks, turning clear water into dark mussel. Broken branches spun in slow circles near the bend. An old fence post knocked against the stones, half submerged, then vanished beneath the surface. Cale adjusted the woven basket against his leg and scanned the water. His hands moved from memory, steady and practiced. He had fished this stretch since boyhood. He knew every lie the river told. Then he saw something that did not belong. At first, it looked like cloth. Dark fabric snagged on reeds. Then it shifted, too smooth, too deliberate. Hair spread across the surface like ink bleeding through paper. Cale's breath caught. "No," he muttered, more plea than word. The shape rolled, and a pale hand broke the surface. Fingers trembled once, weak and searching, before the current dragged it under again. Cale dropped the basket. He was moving before thought could catch up, boots sliding in mud, heart hammering loud enough to drown the river's roar. By the time he reached the bank, the current had carried her closer, snagging her dress on the reeds like the river itself was undecided whether to keep her. She wasn't thrashing. That terrified him more than screams ever could. "Hold on," he said, though he wasn't sure she could hear. "Hold on." Cale stepped into the water. Cold tore through him, sharp and immediate, stealing breath from his lungs. The current shoved hard against his legs, stronger than it looked. He nearly lost his footing, but he pushed forward, reaching, fingers brushing soaked fabric. He caught her beneath the arms, just as the river surged. For a moment it felt like a contest, him against something ancient and cruel. Water climbed his chest, his shoulders. His boots slid over stone. Then the river relented. Cale dragged her free of the reeds and hauled her onto the muddy bank. She collapsed bonelessly, coughing as water spilled from her mouth. The sound was thin, broken, alive, but barely. "Easy," he murmured, kneeling beside her. "You're out. You're safe. Just breathe." Her body shook violently. Her dress clung to her like a weight meant to pull her back under. Dark hair plastered her face, hiding her features. Her eyes fluttered open. Fear lived there. Not confusion, not relief. Fear, raw and unfiltered, the kind that came from being hunted. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Panic surged in her expression, fingers clawing weakly at the mud as if expecting the river to rise up again. Cale leaned closer. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're not in the water anymore. No one's here but me." Her gaze locked onto his, searching his face like it was a map she didn't trust. She swallowed, coughed again, then whispered, so faint he almost missed it. "Don't let them." His spine went cold. "Who?" Cale asked. "Who's after you?" Her eyes slid past him, toward the trees lining the riverbank. Her grip tightened briefly in his sleeve, desperate, pleading. Then her body went slack. "Hey, hey," he said sharply, checking her breathing. Shallow, uneven, but there. Alive. Cale looked up slowly, scanning the forest. The wind stirred the leaves, carrying the sound of rushing water, and nothing else. No voices, no footsteps, no sign of pursuit. Still, the feeling remained. The kind that crawled up a man's spine and whispered that trouble was already close, even if you couldn't see it yet. Cale gathered her carefully into his arms. The river rushed on behind him, disappointed, but not finished.
Cale did not take her to the village. The thought surfaced once, brief, instinctive, then vanished just as quickly. Villages meant people. People meant questions. And questions had a way of spreading faster than truth ever could. He adjusted his grip as he carried her away from the river, her weight uneven and unfamiliar in his arms. Water soaked through his shirt, cold against his skin, but he barely noticed. Her head lolled against his shoulder, breath faint and shallow, each rise of her chest something he counted without meaning to. "Stay with me," he murmured, though she gave no sign she heard. "Just a little longer." The path to the village lay open and familiar, a worn trail where generations of boots had pressed the earth flat. Cale slowed when he reached the fork. Left was home. Right was almost nothing. He turned right. The old trail had nearly vanished, swallowed by brush and neglect. Thorns snagged at his clothes as he pushed through, branches snapping softly beneath his boots. This path was used only during floods now, when hunters needed high ground and solitude. It led to places people had abandoned for good reason. The hut waited where the land dipped low, half hidden by cedar and scrub oak. Its roof sagged unevenly, patched with boards scavenged from who knew where. One shutter hung loose, creaking faintly in the breeze. Cale kicked the door open with his heel. The inside smelled of dust, old wood and ash. He laid her carefully on the narrow cot, easing her down like she might shatter if he wasn't gentle enough. She stirred at the movement, a soft sound escaping her throat. Pain, maybe, or fear. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." He stepped back, forcing himself to look. Cuts marked her hands and forearms, thin, angry lines where skin had been torn. One wound on her upper arm was deeper, jagged in a way rock didn't usually leave behind. "That's not from the river," Cale muttered. "Wire, maybe, or metal." He filled a basin with water, hands steady despite the knot tightening in his chest. When he dabbed at the wound, she flinched hard, eyes snapping open. "Don't!" she gasped, trying to sit up. Pain crossed her face, sharp and immediate. "Easy," Cale said, raising his free hand. "I'm not hurting you. Not on purpose." Her gaze darted around the room, the walls, the door, the shadows gathering in the corners. Panic surged again, fast and bright. "Where am I? Who are you?" "My name's Cale." He kept his voice calm, even. "You're safe. For now." "For now," she echoed faintly, like the words carried more weight than she could understand. He finished cleaning the wound in silence, tearing a strip of cloth to bind it. She watched him the entire time, eyes never leaving his hands. "Do you remember how you got into the river?" he asked gently. She closed her eyes, brow furrowing. Her breathing quickened. She stopped, shaking her head. "No, it's like fog. I know I was running. I know I was scared." Her fingers curled into the blanket. "Someone was chasing me." Cale nodded once. He didn't question it. Some truths didn't need proof. By the time the fire crackled to life, the sun had dipped low, turning the light inside the hut gold and brittle. Shadows stretched long across the floor. She lay back, exhaustion pulling at her features. "You could have taken me to a healer. Why didn't you?" Cale stared into the fire for a moment before answering. "Because healers talk, and whatever found you in that river, it's not done looking." She swallowed hard. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of water and something else too faint to name, but heavy with promise. Somewhere beyond the trees, something listened. And the choice Cale had made to turn away from the village, from safety, settled into place, irreversible. Because whatever this woman had fled from, it was coming. Night came too quietly. No chorus of insects rose with the dark. No distant owl called from the trees. The valley settled into a silence that felt deliberate, like the world itself was holding its breath. Cale noticed it the way he noticed changes in the river. Instinct first, unease second. He fed another small branch into the fire, careful to keep the flames low. Light was a risk, smoke even more so. The hut was old, but it knew how to hide if treated with respect. Across the room, the woman lay awake. She hadn't slept, not really. Her eyes followed the slow movement of shadows across the ceiling, her body tense as a drawn wire. Every sound, the pop of the fire, the groan of wood cooling, made her flinch. "You're listening for something," Cale said quietly, without looking at her. She swallowed. "I don't know what," she admitted, "but I know what it feels like when it's close." Cale glanced at her then. That kind of fear doesn't come from imagination. She shifted, drawing the blanket tighter around herself. "My head is empty," she said, frustration edging her voice. "No names, no faces, but my body remembers." Her hand pressed against her chest. "It knows when to be afraid." Cale stood and moved toward the door, resting his palm against the rough wood. The night beyond it felt wrong, too still, too patient. That was when they heard it. A horse. The sound came faint at first, hoofbeats softened by distance and earth. Then another joined it, slow, measured, not the careless pace of travelers, but the deliberate rhythm of men who knew exactly where they were going. Her breath caught sharply. "They found me." "Quiet," Cale murmured. The hoofbeats stopped somewhere beyond the trees. Then came footsteps. Leather creaked. Metal shifted softly, a sound Cale recognized far too well, the disciplined noise of armed men who expected no resistance. He closed the door without a sound and slid the bar into place. Her eyes were wide now, fixed on him. "What do we do?" "We wait," Cale said, though every instinct in him screamed to move. "And we listen." A knock came moments later. Not hard, not urgent, controlled, polite. The sound of it echoed far too loudly in the small space. A calm voice followed. "Evening." Cale didn't answer. "We're looking for a woman. She may be hurt. Pale, dark hair." A pause. "We'd like to help her." The woman on the cot trembled. She clamped a hand over her mouth, tears pooling in her eyes, not from pain, but from recognition. Cale stepped closer to the door, resting his shoulder against it. His rifle was within reach, but he didn't touch it. "There's no one here," Cale called back, keeping his voice flat. Silence stretched, so long Cale could hear his own heartbeat. Then the voice spoke again, softer now. "You're a fisherman, aren't you?" Cale's jaw tightened. "We've been told you keep to yourself," the man continued pleasantly, "that you don't like trouble." Cale said nothing. Another pause, a shift of weight, the faint scrape of a boot against wood. "We'll check the next place," the voice said at last. "If you see her, tell her she's making this worse for herself." Footsteps retreated. Hoofbeats followed, slowly fading into the distance. Cale didn't move for a long time. Neither did she. When he finally lifted the bar and cracked the door open, the night greeted him with the same heavy silence. No movement, no voices. Gone. She let out a shaky breath. "They know you," she whispered. "They know of me," Cale replied. "Different thing." She hugged her knees to her chest. "They're not done. I can feel it." Cale closed the door again, more firmly this time. "You're right," he said. Her gaze met his, desperate but steady. "If they catch me." "They won't," Cale said, though he didn't know if it was a promise or a lie. Outside, the valley listened, and somewhere in the dark, the hunt merely adjusted its pace. Dawn crept in slowly, thin and gray, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. Cale had not slept. He sat on the low stool near the door, rifle across his knees, listening to the valley breathe again. Somewhere, insects dared to stir. A bird called once, sharp, uncertain, then fell silent. Behind him, the woman shifted on the cot. "You've been awake all night,"
she said softly. Cale didn't turn. So have you. She pushed herself upright, wincing as pain flared through her arm. I didn't want to close my eyes, she admitted. I was afraid I'd wake up back there, or not wake up at all. Cale finally faced her. In the morning light, she looked younger than he'd first thought. Exhausted, bruised, but still sharp-eyed, still fighting, even if she didn't know what she was fighting for. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes." The certainty in his voice made her flinch. "You didn't even hesitate. Men like that don't knock once and walk away forever." She drew a slow breath. "Then staying here isn't safe." "No. Neither is going to your village," she said, watching his face closely. Cale's mouth tightened. "No." Silence settled between them, heavier than the night had been. Finally she asked, "Why help me?" Cale looked past her, to the wall where old tools hung unused. "Because I know what it looks like when someone is being hunted," he said. "And because whoever decided you don't deserve to choose your own fate," he met her gaze again, "they don't get to make that decision for you." Her throat worked as she swallowed. "I don't even know my own name," she whispered. The words seemed to hurt more than her wounds. Cale stood, crossing the room. He knelt in front of her so they were eye level, slowly, deliberately, so he wouldn't startle her. "Names matter," he said. "They anchor you, especially when everything else is gone." She hesitated. "What if I choose the wrong one?" "You won't," Cale said, "because it doesn't have to be permanent." She studied him, searching for mockery or pity. Finding neither, she nodded once. "Then help me choose." Cale thought for a moment. Outside, wind stirred the trees, carrying the faint scent of water and earth, something old and steady. "Ilara," Cale said finally. She repeated it under her breath. "Ilara." The name settled over her like a cloak, not perfect, but warm, protective. "It feels right," she said quietly, "like something I might grow into." "Then it's yours, for as long as you need it." Ilara exhaled, tension easing from her shoulders for the first time since the river. "Thank you," she murmured. Then, after a pause, "What happens now?" Cale stood and began packing what little he had. Dried food, a canteen, a coil of rope. "Now we don't wait for them to decide what happens next." Her eyes widened. "We're leaving?" "Yes." "When?" He slung the pack over his shoulder. "Soon." Ilara's fingers curled into the blanket. "They said I was making this worse by running." Cale stopped at the door and looked back at her. Men who say that are always lying. She managed a small, shaky smile. "You don't scare easily, do you?" "I do," Cale said honestly. "I just don't let it choose for me." Outside, the valley lay open and watchful. Somewhere beyond the trees, paths crossed and plans shifted. Ilara rose unsteadily to her feet, testing her strength. For the first time, she didn't feel like something that had been dragged from the river. She felt like someone who might survive it. Morning light revealed what night had hidden. Cale crouched near the edge of the clearing, fingers brushing the soft earth. The ground told stories if you knew how to read them, and this one spoke clearly. Boot prints. Deep. Intentional. 3, he murmured. No, 4. Ilara stood behind him, wrapped in his spare cloak, watching his movements closely. "They came close," she said. It wasn't a question. "Close enough to smell the fire," Cale replied. "Close enough to think about forcing the door." Her shoulders tightened. "Why didn't they?" Cale straightened slowly. "Because they didn't need to. Not yet." He followed the tracks toward the trees. One set veered slightly, circling the hut instead of approaching it. "They were measuring," Ilara said suddenly. Cale glanced at her. "You've seen this before." She nodded, pressing her fingers to her temple. "Not clearly, but it feels familiar, like they weren't afraid of losing me, just delaying the inevitable." The words settled between them, heavy and sharp. "They didn't chase me because I was weak. They chased me because I was valuable." Cale studied her face, looking for exaggeration or panic. He found neither, only grim certainty. "Valuable how?" Cale asked. Her brow furrowed. I don't know yet, but not money alone. She hesitated. It felt political, dangerous. That set something cold moving in Cale's chest. They returned to the hut. Ilara knelt to gather her few belongings and froze. There, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Half hidden beneath the cot lay a chain. She pulled it free slowly, as if it might bite her. At the end hung a pendant, delicate, finely worked, catching the light in a way no common metal could. Cale's jaw tightened. That's not something a runaway wears. That's something someone important is given. Ilara turned it over in her hands. Her fingers knew its weight, its balance. I remember this, she whispered. Not where it came from, just that I was told never to take it off. Did you? Cale asked. Yes, her voice shook, because I was running. Outside the clearing, far above the trees, a man lowered a spyglass. She's alive, Victor said calmly. The men beside him shifted, relief and irritation mixing in equal measure. Orders? One asked. Victor didn't smile. He never did. The same as before. Retrieve what was taken. And the fisherman? Victor paused, considering. Not yet. Back at the hut, Cale wrapped the pendant in cloth and tucked it into his pack. They'll want that back, he said. Ilara nodded. And if they want it, they'll keep coming. Cale met her gaze. Then we don't stay where we can be found. She squared her shoulders. I won't slow you down. You don't get to decide that yet, Cale said, not unkindly. But you do get to decide one thing. What's that? Whether you run blindly again, he said, or whether you learn why they're hunting you in the first place. Ilara looked down at her hands, still faintly shaking. Then she closed them into fists. I'm done being dragged. Whatever I am to them, I want to know why. Cale nodded once. Good. Beyond the ridge, Victor raised a hand. The hunt resumed. And this time, it was no longer about speed. It was about worth. They left before the sun reached its height. Cale erased what tracks he could, dragging a branch behind them until the earth blurred into meaningless lines. He doused the fire completely, scattering ash into the undergrowth. The hut, his last quiet place, stood empty behind them, door hanging open like a mouth that would never speak. Ilara looked back once. Feels strange, she said, leaving something I never knew was shelter. Cale adjusted the pack on his shoulders. That's how you know it was. They climbed toward higher ground, following a path too narrow to be called a trail. Rocks bit through the soles of their boots. Ilara's breathing grew uneven, pain flaring at her side, but she didn't complain. Every step was deliberate now, chosen, not forced. As the land rose, memories followed. They weren't shouting, Ilara said suddenly, breaking the rhythm of their movement. Not at first. Cale slowed but didn't stop. What do you hear? Voices, she replied, controlled, like they were already certain I belonged to them. Her hand brushed the pendant beneath her cloak. Iron gates, a courtyard, someone arguing on my behalf. She stumbled, catching herself on a rock. Cale reached out, steadying her. Who? He asked. Ilara shook her head. I don't know, but I remember the fear wasn't mine alone. She swallowed. My father, he was afraid before he died. The words hung in the thin mountain air. Cale didn't ask how she knew he was dead. Some truths carried their own certainty. He told me to run, not because I was weak, but because staying would make me something I couldn't undo. Cale's grip tightened briefly on her arm. Then he chose well. They reached a ridge by late afternoon. Below them, the valley spread wide and exposed, beautiful in a way that felt like a trap. Cale scanned the lowlands through narrowed eyes. Then he saw it. Movement, dust, the unmistakable line of riders cutting across the open ground. They're close, Ilara said quietly. Yes. Her pulse hammered, but she didn't freeze this time. She followed his gaze, measuring distance, direction. There's a ravine east, she said. I remember that much. Steep, narrow. Cale studied her, surprised. "Are you sure?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm willing to be wrong." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Good enough." They moved fast now, urgency sharpening every step. The land grew rougher, trees thinning, wind tearing at their clothes. Behind them, a distant crack split the air. A shot. Ilara flinched, heart leaping into her throat. "Don't look back," Cale barked. Another shot rang out, closer this time. "They're hurting us," Ilara said, breathless. "Yes," Cale replied grimly, "which means they don't want you dead." Her voice dropped. "That's supposed to be reassuring?" "No." The ravine came into view, a jagged scar in the earth, narrow and unforgiving. Cale skidded to a halt near its edge, eyes scanning for cover. "This is where we split." Ilara turned on him sharply. "No." He grabbed her wrist and pressed the wrapped pendant into her palm. "You go, now." "I won't leave you," she said fiercely. Cale met her gaze, steady and unyielding. "You save me by living." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then another shot cracked, closer than before. Ilara's resolve broke, not into fear, but into something harder. She closed her fingers around the pendant. "I'll come back," she whispered. Cale shook his head once. "You don't come back. You go forward." She ran. Shots echoed as riders crested the ridge. Cale turned, rifle raised, planting himself between them and the path she'd taken. Moments later, he was on the ground, bound, blood in his mouth, vision swimming. Victor dismounted calmly. "You should have stayed a fisherman," Victor said. Cale spat red into the dirt. Above them, the sky stretched wide and uncaring, and somewhere beyond the ravine, Ilara ran, not blindly anymore, but toward a future that might finally demand the truth. The ground fell away beneath Ilara's feet. She barely felt it at first, only the sharp burn in her lungs, the thud of her heart pounding too hard, too fast. Wind tore at her hair as she ran, branches lashing her arms, stones sliding loose beneath her boots. Behind her, the sound of gunfire echoed again. Closer. "Don't stop," she whispered to herself. "Don't stop." The ravine opened suddenly, a jagged wound in the earth. Its sides dropped steep and unforgiving, carved by centuries of rushing water. A narrow path clung to the edge, barely wide enough for one person at a time. Ilara skidded to a halt, panic flaring. Then she heard it, Victor's voice, calm and unhurried, drifting from behind her like a promise. "Ilara," he called, "you don't need to do this." Her breath hitched. Hearing her name, that name spoken with such certainty, made her chest ache. She ran. Loose gravel gave way beneath her feet as she scrambled down the narrow path, fingers scraping against stone. Pain flared through her wounded side, hot and sharp, but she bit back a cry. Falling wasn't an option. Above, riders reined in their horses, frustration rippling through them. The ravine wasn't meant for mounts. "Fan out," Victor ordered. "She can't go far." Ilara's thoughts raced as she descended. "Think, don't panic." Cale's voice echoed in her head, steady and grounding. "You go forward." At the bottom, the ravine narrowed into a twisting corridor of rock and shadow. The air was cooler here, damp and echoing. She pressed herself against the stone wall, chest heaving, listening. Footsteps echoed from above, men dismounting, weapons clinking softly. "She's injured. We'll flush her out." Another laughed quietly. "Always she runs." The words sent a chill through her. Always. A memory surged, hands gripping her arms, not cruel but firm. A man kneeling in front of her, eyes dark with fear and resolve. "Run, Ilara." Her father's voice. She staggered forward, tears blurring her vision, forcing herself to keep moving. The ravine curved sharply, hiding her from view. She ducked into a narrow crevice just wide enough to conceal her, pressing her back against cold stone. Footsteps passed. A shadow crossed the ground just inches from her boots. She held her breath, every muscle screaming. "Victor," a man called softly. "We lost her tracks." Victor's response came after a pause. Then she's learning. Ilara waited long minutes before moving again. When she did, it was slow and deliberate, every step chosen. She followed the ravine until it widened, spilling out into rough woodland she didn't recognize. Freedom, thin, fragile, but real. Miles away, Cale awoke to pain. Rough hands hauled him upright. His wrists burned where rope bit into flesh. Blood ran warm down his temple, blurring his vision. Victor stood before him, immaculate despite the dust. His eyes were sharp, assessing, not angry. "You're stubborn. I respect that." Cale laughed weakly. "Shoulda let the river take her." Victor leaned closer. "You know that's not true." His voice dropped. "You can help her, or you can die quietly." Cale met his gaze, defiant even now. "She won't stop." Victor straightened. "Neither will we." Outside, hooves thundered as riders regrouped. The hunt had shifted. No longer about retrieval, no longer about negotiation. It was about erasure. And somewhere ahead, Ilara stumbled into lands where no law waited to protect her, only the truth she was running towards, and the cost of remembering it.
Ilara ran until the world narrowed to pain and breath. Her side burned with every step, a sharp reminder of the wound she'd forgotten in the rush to survive. Blood dampened her shirt beneath the cloak, sticky and warm. She pressed a hand there, willing herself forward. Just a little farther. The ravine spat her out into unfamiliar land, rolling scrub and broken stone, the trees spaced wider apart, offering less cover. The sky stretched pale and endless above her, indifferent to the chase unfolding beneath it. Behind her, a voice carried on the wind. "Ilara," called Victor again, unhurried. "This ends cleaner if you stop." She stumbled, nearly falling. Hearing him so close sent a spike of terror through her chest, but beneath it, something else stirred. Anger. "You don't get to decide how this ends," she shouted back, her voice hoarse and shaking. A pause. Then Victor spoke again, closer now. "You're wrong," he said calmly. "That decision was made long before you ran." Ilara ran harder. Her legs screamed in protest, vision blurring at the edges. Memories pressed at her mind, now not full scenes but impressions. A high window, a locked door, a voice telling her she was necessary. Not loved, not protected, necessary. She broke through a line of trees and nearly collapsed, catching herself against a trunk. For a moment the world tilted. She slid down into the dirt, gasping, forcing air into her lungs. "Get up." She fumbled beneath her cloak, fingers finding the wrapped pendant. The metal was cool against her skin, grounding her, important, dangerous. "This is why they want me." She pushed herself back to her feet and limped onward, choosing a path that dipped low and twisted, hiding her from sight. Somewhere behind her, orders were shouted. Riders split, their formation widening. They weren't chasing blindly anymore. They were closing a net. Miles away, Cale woke with a groan. Pain flared through his skull as he was dragged upright. His hands were bound behind him, rope cutting deep. One eye had swollen shut, and every breath tasted like iron. Victor crouched in front of him, level with his gaze. "You could have walked away, Vale. You chose not to." Cale spat blood at his boots. "You're afraid of her." Victor's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. "I'm afraid of what happens if she remembers." Cale's laugh turned into a cough. "Then you're already losing." Victor rose, dusting off his gloves. "We'll see." He nodded to the men. "Move. We don't let her cross the border." Back in the scrublands, Ilara slowed, senses screaming. The land ahead felt different, wilder, unclaimed. She crested a low rise and froze. Beyond it lay a broken road, old and cracked, disappearing into distant hills. No banners,
No watchtowers, no sign of authority. Freedom, or something like it. A shot rang out behind her, the bullet biting into the dirt near her feet. Victor's voice followed, closer than ever. Ilara, last chance. Her heart thundered. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze across the distance. I don't know who I am, but I know I won't be yours. For the first time, Victor smiled, and it wasn't kind. Run, he said softly. Let's see how far you make it. She turned and crossed the road. As her boots hit the other side, something shifted, not in the land, but in the hunt itself. The riders hesitated just for a heartbeat. Victor didn't. The hunt continues, he ordered. No capture necessary. Behind her, the rules changed. Ahead, Ilara vanished into a world where no law waited to protect her, only the truth buried in her past and the dangerous knowledge she was beginning to remember. And somewhere deep inside, a question burned brighter than fear.
Ilara ran into the unknown, every step pulling her farther from safety, but closer to something she didn't yet understand. Behind her, the sound of hooves faded, but she knew it wasn't over. Will she survive long enough to uncover the truth about who she really is? What price will remembering her past demand, and is she ready to pay it? And what will happen to Kale, trapped and bleeding, as the hunters tighten their grip? The answers are out there, waiting. Now it's your turn. What do you think Ilara will do next? Will she fight, hide, or try to turn the hunters against themselves? Drop your thoughts in the comments.